Good day, everyone. We're going to continue on with our last lesson from lesson 3-1, which is going to be solving a system of equations, but actually developing it from a word problem. Okay, you're going to see that the actual techniques we use today are things we've actually seen before within our classes and things like that. Our goal is going to be able to create two separate equations from a word problem, and then at the same time be able to solve for each of those equations. Okay. Now, within this lesson, I'm going to talk about how to actually develop the equations and go through them. In class tomorrow, we'll actually talk about how to create them and how to actually solve them out too. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at situations like this. Like a karate school offers a package of 12 group lessons and 2 private lessons for $110. It also offers a package of 10 group lessons and 3 private lessons for $125. Write and solve a system of equations to find the cost of a single group lesson and a single private lesson. Okay, so now whenever we're looking at this, we want to try to think, how can we kind of compare these together? We want to try to think, how can we compare all the values given to us into a single problem, or I should say 2 separate equations, okay? So when I read this problem, I see 2 big things here. We have 2 different packages, right? So I'm going to say package 1 and package 2. Okay, let's just break it down into 2 different parts. Okay. In package 1, we have 12 group lessons, 2 private, and that costs $110. Oops. On the other side of this, in package 2, we have 10 group lessons, 3 private, and that's going to cost you a total of $125. Okay? Now, the key thing to understand is that pretty much after you take this step and actually write out each of these values, you pretty much have equations given to you. Now, the only difference is you have to develop both an x and a y. Well, for this problem, let's just make exactly what x and y. Let's make these 2 basically what we have already seen within the problem, okay? Notice how we have similar variables in each of these. They each have a group and they each have a private. This is kind of a clear indicator telling us that one of them is going to be our x and one of them is going to be our y, depending on what we want to make it, okay? So I'm going to make x the group and y private, okay? Now, knowing that, I can start developing an equation based off each of these, okay? And this is where it gets fairly straightforward. I've already have it organized. I just need to create 2 different equations. So if I want to create a system, I just have to follow 3 different aspects. What I'm given in each of these packages, these values here, and then my actual totals given here, okay? So let's go ahead and actually apply this. In package 1, if I have 12 groups and it costs X per amount per group, so I'm going to take the value of 12X because that's going to be the groups times the cost of the group plus 2Y equals 110. And if you notice, if you compare this equation to what I have under my grouping, notice how it literally just goes in line with what you see there. Okay, it literally just goes down the line of what we already have been given. So let's go ahead and go and do the next equation. Well, which again, I want to follow the same rules. This is all going to follow in line. We have 10 group, 3 private, and it costs 125. Well, it's going to be 10x, because that's our groups, plus 3y. Okay, I was looking at the wrong one, my bad. 3y, and that's going to be equal to our total, which is 125. And just like that, we built a system of these 2 situations, and we did it fairly easily. Okay, we just wrote down what's each package going to be offering me, and then threw in some x's and y's, and we have a system there. Okay. Now, like I said, in this situation, how we would solve this out would be the same exact method we would use as if we were doing the last 2 lessons. Okay, we'd use substitution, elimination, or graphing, and we'd either find an intersection point or basically find out where x and y are equal to one another. Okay. In class tomorrow, we're actually going to go through one of these. We're going to go through the full process of solving it out. Within the video, we got to be able to first create it. So this is going to be our first focus. So let's go ahead and talk about one more. Okay. Now, I want to give this one here just because it is slightly different. I want us to kind of understand why it's different. Okay. Eli invested a total of $2,000 in two stocks. One stock costs $8.50 per share, and the other costs $10.40 per share. Eli bought a total of 130 shares. Write and solve a system of equations to find out how many shares of each stock Eli bought. Okay. So let's try to think about how we could create this one. So I see two very specific groupings here. In the first one, we had two different packages. We have package one, package two. In this one, we're going to have how much he invested. So we have a money and the total amount of shares. Okay. So we have the money and the shares. Okay. Well, if I'm dealing with the money, we have 2,000 in total. So we have 2,000 total, which is always a key number. $2,000 total spent. It costs $18.50 per share of one stock. So we're going to say $18.50, and we'll just write stock one. And then the other one costs $10.40. So we'll just say $10.40 for stock two. Okay. For the second portion of this problem, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing, you kind of run out of numbers, right? You have a total of 130 shares left over, and that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write total 130 shares. Okay. And I'm going to be honest with you, once you get to this point, there's actually a little trick to actually get this equation or get these two equations. Okay. And I'll show you how in a second here. Before we have to get to that, we have to talk about what X and Y are. Well, there's always going to be two things denoted in each problem that's going to be important. Okay. We bought 130 total stocks, and stock one and two are in both problems. Okay. So we can pretty much note that X and Y have to be the two different stocks. We don't know how many we bought of each, but we know we bought them. So we're going to make X stock one and Y stock two. At this point, we can start developing our two equations. Let's go ahead and write our little bracket. And let's start developing each of these. The first one should be fairly straightforward. Okay, notice how it all goes in line here, and I can pretty much write each one of them out. It costs $18.50 for stock one, so I'm going to do $18.50. And then since I have a stock one here, we got to know that since this is stock one, X is also stock one, so it's $18.50X. Next, we go over here. We have $10.40 per stock two. Well, once again, stock two, that's our Y value. So we're going to add $10.40 Y, and that's going to be equal to our total, which was $2,000 spent. Okay. Notice how after I organize these in the money portion or the money category, it just literally goes in order. You have your total equal to your two values added together. For the last step here, we have shares, and we have 130 total stocks. Well, I got to try to figure out how can I actually turn this into an equation. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's actually fairly easy. Notice how X and Y are both stock one and stock two. Okay. Because each of these values are our stock, if we want to find the total, I would just take my two values of stock, which are X and Y, and add them together. Because if I take stock one and stock two and combine them, that should give me my total stocks. So all I have to do here is do X plus Y equals 130. An easy way to remember this is when we're organizing, if you have a singular value like this, every single time it's going to be an X plus Y is equal to the total. Okay. If they are not going to give you any other values, you really have nothing else to work with. And because of that, it's got to be an equation like this, where I take two lowly variables and throw them in with my total. Okay. Now, like I said, tomorrow in class, we'll actually talk about how we actually solve these out. But that's it for this lesson here. Make sure you're answering the Edpuzzle questions. And besides that, I'll see you tomorrow in class. Have a great day.